a distressed woman who reveals she was late in getting married and was left at a loss after a broken engagement. She is shown in bed, looking deeply troubled as she reflects on the shocking fact that she is now set to marry her childhood friend. Later, at a party, this woman, Letitia, is seen sighing and looking incredibly bored. A companion tells her she must at least try to smile. Letitia internally believes that no one would be happy to make eye contact with her anyway. Her companion insists she needs to make eye contact with the men passing by and stop staring into space, explaining she must create her own opportunities for marriage. The companion suggests men don't mind being looked at by any woman, at least at first, an idea Letitia finds ridiculous. Letitia knows she must find a marriage partner this year. She is aware that as she gets older, her options narrow because everyone knows she is a stick in the mud. She gazes across the room at the crown prince, thinking he looks charming. She describes herself as dull and boring and notes that even though she is turning 19 and has attended parties for 3 years, no man ever approaches her. Meanwhile, other guests gossip about Crown Prince Ethelbert. They discuss how he is no longer seeing Count Drouin's daughter because the Count caused a scene over their casual relationship, which he mistook for something serious. The guests admire how radiant the prince is and praise him as handsome and skilled in both literary and martial arts. They agree that any woman he chooses will be fortunate, seeing his constant flirting as just a minor flaw. Letitia's companion reminds her that she used to be close to the prince. Letitia, however, silently objects, wondering why his behavior of flirting with every woman, regardless of her status, is simply dismissed as romantic. She thinks of him as a flirt who has been this way since childhood. She has a flashback to when they were young, where other girls bragged about kissing Ethel. The flashback shows a young Letitia confronting him, telling him it wasn't right. She told him it was morally wrong to kiss multiple girls like Emma, Cynthia, and even a maid, and to act so suggestively with everyone. Young Ethel just called her stiff and naggy, like a strict tutor. He insisted it was just fun and that no one falls in love over a kiss, something he said she wouldn't understand. She had challenged him, asking what was fun about getting someone's hopes up. Back in the present, her companion teases her, saying Letitia secretly wants to dance with Prince Ethelbert and feel her heart flutter. Letitia internally scoffs, thinking it is only for status and would make her blood boil. Just then, Prince Ethelbert himself approaches and asks Letitia to dance. She is surprised and makes a sarcastic comment about him not asking a proper lady, but she reluctantly accepts, feeling she has no way out of it. After the dance, Letitia escapes to a balcony, sighing that she is not cut out for these parties. She cringes, remembering that she couldn't stand the silence during their dance and ended up passionately rambling about folklore. She recalls explaining how the kingdom was founded by fairies and how her own family, the House of Rasmoa, is descended from them. While she is passionate about this history, she knows it was not a suitable topic for a ballroom, as her partner's shocked expression confirmed. She laments that her family is now fallen, and she inherited none of her ancestors' fairy gifts or charm to help them. She feels she is too rigid and hates that she must attend these parties, wishing she could just discuss life philosophy instead. Suddenly, Crown Prince Ethelbert appears behind her, saying he saw his old friend looked troubled and wanted to help. He tells her she lacks flirtatious conversation skills and then critiques her appearance, calling her makeup outdated and her dress too stiff. He suggests a different hairstyle or a dress showing more shoulder would be more appealing. He observes that most men don't want to discuss life philosophies at a dance. Letitia, annoyed, tells him to leave her alone, accusing him of generalizing and assuming all men are like him, changing women daily and dragging them into corners. He warns her that her reputation will suffer, then softens, telling her she is cute and comparing her to a proud violet. Flustered, Letitia asks how many women he said that to. He slyly admits countless, dismissing it as mere wordplay. Letitia angrily calls him the worst. As a cat meows nearby, Ethel leans in and whispers for her to look at him, but they are interrupted. Letitia turns to pet the cat, saying she isn't dancing anyway. Ethel insists they dance, offering to help his old friend practice. She refuses and accuses him of being forceful as he pulls her to the dance floor. He instructs her to just look into his eyes and let the man lead the conversation. After dancing with the prince, Letitia dances with another man. Guests identify him as Damien Cart, an heir with an average background. Prince Ethelbert watches them, thinking to himself that Damien is a strict soldier who is famously uncharming. As Letitia dances with Damien, she hears these descriptions and thinks he sounds ideal, feeling they would understand each other perfectly. Sometime later, Ethel is stunned by the news that Letitia and Damien are engaged. His friend confirms that Damien's side is spreading the word and everyone assumes Letitia is spoken for. They apparently hit it off right after her dance with Ethel. Ethel looks thoughtful and sarcastically remarks how convenient it is that she found someone who meets all her criteria. Letitia recalls her conversation with Damien, who was intrigued that she didn't force a smile. He had clearly listed his life plan. He will remain a soldier, his hobby is collecting rifles, he wants 2 sons to secure the succession, and he expects his wife to manage the estate. Letitia was thrilled by how rational and straightforward he was, getting all his expectations out in one dance. She excitedly thought he might marry her even without love. Ethel confronts her about this, asking if she is serious about Damien. Letitia asks why not. Ethel protests that this isn't right, saying he wants her to be happy. He argues Damien is just picking her like furniture and doesn't care about her happiness, only about finding a wife who fits his desires. He is also horrified that Damien called children spares. Letitia defends the arrangement, saying this is simply how noble marriages work. Ethel then points out that marriage involves having children with Damien and crassly bets the man is bad at it. Letitia is shocked, admitting she only learned about marital relations last year. She stands firm, declaring she wants to marry based on conditions and doesn't need love. Letitia accuses Ethel of denying her whole identity, yelling that she isn't a charmer like him. Frustrated, Ethel tells her to do as she pleases. At that exact moment, her companion runs up in a panic, shouting that there is a massive scandal about Damien circulating everywhere. Letitia's companion bursts in with a panicked look, shouting that Lord Damien's scandal is now the talk of the town. She explains that at a tea party, the rumor was that he fell in love at first sight with a maid in the royal palace, telling her, "I love you," and declaring he was breaking off his engagement to chase her. Letitia is stunned, as she had believed he was a man who would marry based on conditions, not love. She tries to rationalize that if he is just keeping a maid as a mistress, she could acknowledge it, but in another location, Ethel scoffs at the idea of a maid. He thinks Damien is completely shameless for making a move on a maid, while Letitia tries to convince herself to just wait for the rumors to die down. A few days later, her companion returns with even more shocking news. Lord Damien eloped with the maid. He abandoned everything to follow the maid after she was banished from the royal palace and was even disowned by the Cart family. Letitia cannot believe this is true, but soon a formal request arrives from the Cart family asking to dissolve the engagement. Letitia stands in shock, realizing it is all over. She reflects that it's finished and now she is branded as the poor noble lady who got her engagement broken off, which is a stain on her name. Elsewhere, a small fairy boasts that it was a piece of cake for them and that Lord Ethel takes bold actions despite his quiet appearance. The fairies are shown with Ethel, demanding their reward of gold coins. Ethel hands over a bag, and the fairies celebrate, admiring the glimmering gold. As they fly away, telling him to call if he needs them again, Ethel stands alone, thinking that Letitia must be furious. He was desperate enough to use a special charm potion, one made from the love grass found in the land of the fairies. He did this because her marriage was moving too quickly. He reflects on the history of fairies, who were once welcomed by the founding king but gradually vanished from the human world, retreating to the fairy realm. Ethel admits to himself that he used the few remaining fairies to secretly drop the charm potion onto both of Damien's eyelids, which is what made him fall in love with the maid. He felt he had no choice. He thinks of Letitia, acknowledging she means everything to him and that he wants her to be happy with someone extraordinary. He had originally intended to use the potion on a man worthy of her to ensure her happy marriage. However, he clenches his fist, admitting the truth. He secretly wants to use the potion on Letitia's eyelids, to make her see him and fall in love with him. He is tormented by a memory of young Letitia telling him it's not good to lead everyone on and feels he is not the kind of person she could ever like. He tries to brush the feeling aside, thinking he is just hungry. He decides to have a little snack, before going to comfort Letitia and approaches a nearby maid, who is happy just to see his face. He leans in close to the blushing maid, asking if he should take a closer look, before feeding by licking his finger with a dark expression. He then walks away from the dazed maid, thinking it wasn't enough and he needs to catch more people. This is all part of the perfect cover he has built for years, the reputation that the crown prince is easily charmed by women. As he is leaving, he is stopped by his brother, Richard. Richard teases him about bringing along bad company and heading to another shady place. Richard calls it the best place for a man to have fun. Ethel internally reflects on Richard's past. Their father banned him from brothels, so Richard had his followers kidnap and humiliate town girls out of spite. He showed no repentance for this, leading Ethel to conclude it's better if Richard just sticks to brothels. Richard interrupts his thoughts, asking if Ethel is only interested in that high and mighty, noble woman. Richard complains that brothels are expensive and says he envies Ethel for getting women for free. Ethel silently thinks that he envies Richard, because at least Richard is human. Ethel knows that if his own true identity were discovered, he would be erased. He looks at his hand, thinking someone as dangerous as him has no right to take Letitia's. Ethel then arrives at Letitia's house, apologizing for the unannounced visit and saying he just wanted to see how she was doing. A servant honors his arrival and informs him that Letitia has been feeling very down. He enters her room to find her asleep in a chair, guessing she was too shocked to sleep last night. He gently touches her hair, thinking how his heart races when he touches her, even though he can't absorb life energy from her. This feeling alone makes him dizzy with happiness. He recalls how he used to find out which parties she was attending and make excuses just to dance with her, savoring the simple act of resting his hand on her waist. He whispers, "Cheer up," to the sleeping Letitia, assuring her she will find someone worthy. He vows to himself that no matter how hungry he gets, he will never sacrifice her. He flashes back to his childhood, when many children were brought to the palace. He never had trouble finding food, but it was exhausting, and he knew the other kids sensed he was different. He remembers young Letitia approaching him, observing that he always watched from a distance and asking if hiding his true identity was difficult. He was shocked and told her she wouldn't understand, but she replied that she might. She then revealed her own secret. She is a descendant of fairies whose ancestors helped the king. She admitted she can see fairies, describing how they wave back at her. Ethel was amazed, calling it a lovely skill. When she asked if he believed her, he said, "Of course." Back in the present, Ethel looks at her sleeping form, reflecting that she became special to him that day. He saw her as kind and beautiful, even if she was square. He remembers her rigid nature made her unpopular, and the next time he saw her was at a charity bazaar, where she worked silently while others chatted. He thinks her ability to stand tall, unaffected by others, always catches his eye. His lonely heart strongly desires her, and he is tormented by the paradox of wanting her happiness but also never wanting to let her go. He leans down and whispers, "I love you, even if you hate me." Later, Letitia wakes up blushing, exclaiming that she dreamt Ethel kissed her. She figures she only had the dream because she was told he visited while she was napping yesterday. As she's trying to dismiss the dream, insisting Ethel finds her annoying, her companion bursts in. Letitia quickly denies being happy he worried about her, just as her companion shouts that Letitia has received a marriage proposal. The proposal is from the crown prince. Letitia, who appears troubled as she walks through a palace hallway, thinking about the ailing queen dowager. The queen is very worried because her grandson, Prince Ethel, will not settle down, and she strongly recommended Letitia as his marriage partner. The queen fears she won't be able to die in peace until she sees him married, so Letitia, concerned for the queen's health, decides to visit her. When Letitia arrives, she finds the queen dowager sitting warmly in a chair surrounded by flowers. The queen smiles kindly as she thanks Letitia for coming. Letitia asks about her health, and the queen says she has calmed down, but then she immediately asks if Letitia has heard about the engagement talks with Ethel. The queen explains that she desperately wants to see the marriage happen, as she is old and this is her one remaining wish. She speaks fondly of Ethel, calling him a wonderful and diligent child who has grown admirably as the crown prince. The queen dowager then turns her praise to Letitia, noting that she is not arrogant despite her high status and treats everyone with consideration. She also mentions Letitia's unique and wonderful talent for being able to see fairies. But then, the queen's mood darkens, and she grabs Letitia's hands in desperation. She reveals her true worry. Ethel's problem is that at 22, he flits from woman to woman like a butterfly and has approached nearly every maid in the castle. The queen tearfully begs Letitia, praising her dignity, virtue, and tireless charitable work, to please teach Ethel how to be more composed so that she can finally die in peace. Letitia is left stunned by this heavy request. Later, Letitia walks alone down a long hallway, feeling conflicted and wondering what Ethel himself thinks about the arrangement. She hides behind a pillar, knowing the queen wishes someone like her would be with Ethel. She continues on her way, feeling dejected, assuming Ethel must be tired of her nagging and probably doesn't like her. Just then, a large, fluffy white cat named Duke brushes up against her leg. Letitia affectionately picks up Duke and holds him close, deciding she must go hear Ethel's true feelings first. She asks Duke to come with her, and the cat looks comically surprised. Soon after, a servant announces Lady Letitia's arrival to Prince Ethel, who is standing alone in a room. Ethel turns to greet Letitia, who is still holding Duke, and he remarks that he thought she would be coming. Letitia, with a dark expression, states that she came to hear what he thinks about the engagement. Ethel calmly sits at his desk, resting his chin on his hand, and tells her to go ahead and speak. The two sit far apart in the large, opulent room, and Letitia senses the heavy atmosphere, thinking this must be an unpleasant topic for him. Ethel suddenly shoos the cat away, and Duke leaps from Letitia's lap. As Letitia nervously begins to speak, Ethel interrupts and asks how his grandmother is doing. This makes Letitia wonder if he already knew her true feelings. She asks him directly if he only arranged the engagement because he felt sorry for her after her previous engagement was broken off. Ethel looks up, completely shocked by her question. Letitia presses on, explaining that her parents are eager for the match but that he shouldn't worry about her feelings. She thought his kindness might be forcing him to agree so she wouldn't be depressed after the incident with Damien. Hearing this, Ethel suddenly stands up, looking truly angry, and declares that she is the one who should be angry. Letitia is confused, insisting she just feels the match is too much for her. Ethel, gripping a chair, passionately explains that she is being forced into a convenient situation where she'd be expected to ignore his unfaithfulness just to protect the royal family's reputation. Letitia quietly admits she had suspected as much. Ethel is shocked that she understood this, which is why he hates forcing her into the marriage. But then he makes a shocking confession. He also hates that, despite the awful situation, he is happy about the possibility of marrying her. He looks directly at her and admits it's because he loves her. Letitia is left blushing and speechless. He continues, saying he'd be happy to be with her. Letitia clarifies that she doesn't hate him, but admits it's a lie that she's not fond of him, noting that he always teased her while only pursuing other girls. She looks down, thinking her voice may have become harsh toward him over time. Then, blushing, she confesses that she has liked him for a long time, calling him a kind, good, and dazzling person, and admits she was envious of the other girls he chose. Ethel is completely moved and stunned by her confession, quietly asking if it's true. Letitia reflects that if he is willing to get angry on her behalf, it might be nice to be with him. Though she's unsure how sincere his love is, she decides to accept him. At that moment, Ethel's demeanor changes. He pulls her close and swears he will marry her. He makes a powerful vow that he will never betray her and will remain only her husband, even if his life is in danger. He embraces her tightly, leaving Letitia overwhelmed. Later, Ethel is back in his room with Duke, floating on air and shouting with joy. He thanks his grandmother, ecstatic about the marriage. But Duke the cat, who can apparently talk, scolds him about the promise he just made. Ethel, still giddy, says Letitia agreed to marry him and said she loves him, proclaiming he could die happy. Duke panics, telling him he can't die. Ethel repeats his vow to never touch another woman, and Duke reveals the crisis. Ethel is now extremely hungry. If he gets too hungry, he will lose his sanity and hunt for food, exposing his true identity to the many fairy-studying scholars. Ethel's joy instantly turns to pained realization as he clutches his stomach, overwhelmed by hunger. Duke asks why he's hungry when he just got something from Letitia, but Ethel, sweating, cries that he has liked her for too long to ever think of her as food. He leans against the wall in agony, wanting to keep his vow. Duke yells at him, saying he's been looking at Letitia desirously and is even jealous of the cat. Duke then transforms, urging Ethel to eat now, before something terrible happens. Meanwhile, Letitia is walking in a happy daze, blushing as she recalls Ethel's beautiful face during his proposal. She thinks about his vow to protect her even if his life is in danger. Suddenly, a tiny, panicked fairy appears in her room, shouting that the prince is in trouble and that she must come to the palace immediately. Letitia, able to see the fairy, is shocked. The fairy transforms into a large, winged creature and tells her to climb on its back. They fly quickly to the palace, and Letitia bursts through Ethel's door, only to trip and fall hard onto the floor. As she looks up from the ground, she sees Ethel standing over her, his face pale and shadowed. She asks what's wrong, but as she tries to help, he looms over her. Letitia feels his teeth hit her neck as he bites down. She feels her strength rapidly draining away, confused about what is happening. Ethel pulls back, panting and pained, and apologizes. As Letitia looks up in shock, he reveals his dark secret. He is an incubus. Letitia is stunned on the floor as Ethel, panting heavily, confesses his secret. He is an incubus. Suddenly, Ethel seems to snap out of his daze, looking shocked to find Letitia in his room and wondering if he is dreaming. The cat, Duke, appears and clarifies the situation, explaining that Ethel had collapsed from extreme hunger, so Duke summoned Letitia for help. Letitia, still on the floor, begins to understand that he fainted from hunger. She tries to reassure Ethel, saying she is okay and was just a little surprised. She admits, however, that her body feels very sluggish and she is unable to move. Ethel, looking ashamed, apologizes to her. He sits up and formally explains his true identity, revealing he is not only an incubus but also a changeling, a fairy child swapped at birth. Letitia recognizes the legend and is shocked to learn Ethel is one of them. Ethel continues his explanation, stating that to survive, he must absorb human life energy as sustenance. He apologizes again, admitting he simply got carried away because he was so hungry. Letitia tells him there is no need to apologize, as he was only doing what he needed to do to live. Ethel is surprised and asks if she truly believes his story. Letitia confirms that she does, since she was brought to him by a fairy and is witnessing everything with her own eyes. A blushing Ethel thanks her for her understanding. This leads Letitia to ask how he has managed to feed himself up until now. He confesses that he has been taking just a small amount of energy from many different people. Letitia is shocked, connecting this to the endless rumors about his womanizing. Ethel quickly clarifies that he has never gone all the way with anyone. He explains that the rumors were just a side effect of his hypnosis and that he can feed through simple contact, like a kiss or touching fingertips. He confirms that the kiss they just shared was how he fed from her and that as long as the person is healthy, it doesn't harm them. Letitia is stunned by the revelation, and Ethel grows serious. He explains that as an incubus, when he truly loves someone, that person becomes special to him, and he declares that Letitia is the only special person for him. Moved, Letitia asks what she can do to help him. Ethel's request is simple. He needs her to always stay healthy and energetic and to share her energy by kissing him a few times every day. He assures her that is all he needs, and Letitia happily agrees. 3 months later, Ethel and Letitia are married. Sometime after the wedding, Ethel visits his grandmother, the Queen Dowager, who looks perfectly healthy. He remarks that he thinks she may have tricked him. The Queen cheerfully admits she pretended to be sick but insists it's fine since everything turned out so well. Later, Ethel and Letitia are spending time in a garden. After a kiss, Ethel whispers that she was delicious and asks if she wants more, teasingly asking if she is getting wet. Letitia becomes extremely flustered, telling him not to say such things in public and calling him an idiot. Ethel just smiles, admitting he loves seeing her angry, flustered face. Letitia reflects that he has kept his promise, touching no other woman since that day, and instead touches her very often. This new life involves them kissing passionately several times a day. Letitia notes that whenever he kisses her to drain her energy, her body has a strange reaction. Ethel notices this and asks her directly if kissing him makes her wet. Blushing, Letitia admits that when he kisses her, down there reacts. She worries that this is a new phenomenon and wonders if it's an illness or if it will be a problem for their marriage. Ethel simply gazes at her with a knowing smile, telling her she is incredibly adorable. Reflecting on this, Letitia admits that his happy expression made her accept him despite her confusion. At their wedding reception, the Queen Dowager was overjoyed, thanking Letitia profusely for marrying Ethel and saying she felt a great weight lifted from her shoulders. Though Letitia wondered at the time if she was just being swept along by the situation, she looks at her new husband and admits she is truly happy. Finally, their long wedding day, filled with greetings and celebrations, comes to an end. Letitia enters their bedroom, exhausted, but realizes the hardest part, the wedding night, is just beginning. She looks toward the large canopy bed and is surprised to find Ethel already fast asleep, apparently tired from the day. Letitia quietly climbs into bed beside him, only for Ethel to suddenly roll over, revealing he was awake, and trap her beneath him. He leans in close and whispers that tonight, it is okay for her to get really wet. He begins to kiss her neck and shoulders, calling her beautiful and saying he has never touched anything that made his heart race so much. As Letitia cries out his name, he tells her he is going crazy and that she can't stop him. He explains that the bedroom is a place for them to let loose and that as an incubus, it is his instinct to make his partner feel pleasure. He whispers that he would be happy if she willingly accepts him and asks her to let him hear her voice. He begins to touch her intimately, murmuring that she is already really wet, and asks if she can feel how hard he is. Letitia is overcome, admitting that it feels good but she is too embarrassed. Ethel, consumed by desire, tells her she is just too cute and that he can't hold back any longer. On their wedding night, Ethel is on the bed with Letitia, who is overwhelmed and protests that she can't, saying it's too soon. Ethel, positioned over her, simply calls her too cute and admits that he is the one getting overly excited. He begins to touch her intimately, noting how wet she already is and asking her if it feels good. As Letitia pants that she feels hot, Ethel continues his exploration, inserting a finger inside her. Letitia gasps, noting how warm he is and how her whole body is tingling, but she manages to confirm that it doesn't hurt. Ethel observes how slippery and hot she is inside, musing that he could add another finger. Ethel himself becomes overwhelmed by the sensation, admitting he feels like he is going to lose it. He pants and whispers her name, telling her he wants to become one with her. He then enters her, and they both cry out, with Ethel exclaiming how hot she is as they consummate their marriage. In the afterglow, they are both panting. Ethel, still inside her, gently tells her to breathe and comments on how tight she feels. He whispers that he is incredibly happy just being inside her, confirming he is all the way in. Letitia whispers back that she is happy too. Just as Letitia relaxes, feeling Ethel's arms holding her tight, she suddenly feels something else. She cries out in confusion, asking, "What is this?" She begins to thrash, yelling "no" and "hot," as several tentacle-like appendages surround her. A surprised Ethel asks her to wait. The "nyoro," as he calls them, retract, and a flustered Ethel explains that he got too excited and lost control. He clarifies that incubi possess these extra organs, which feel like tongues, specifically to absorb life energy. Letitia, blushing, admits she was just a little surprised because there were so many of them. Ethel smiles, acknowledging their first night has been eventful, and promises he won't let anything get in their way again. He says the way she looks at him makes his heart race and apologizes for not being gentle as they resume making love. Letitia cries out, amazed at how good it feels and thinking she might lose herself from the pleasure, even though it's her first time. Letitia then narrates that after their first night, they moved into the Crown Prince's palace, the traditional home for heirs until they take the throne. Their official duties were reduced for the first month, allowing them to spend their days together at a relaxed pace. During this time, Ethel made a happy discovery. The life energy he gains from sexual activity is as sustaining as carbohydrates, making his previous meals of light touches feel like trying to survive on only vegetables. Letitia also asked him about the nyoro. Ethel explained that he can normally control them completely. He confessed that he had intended to keep the tentacles hidden from her forever. However, the pleasure of their first night was so unlike anything he had ever experienced that his reason and self-control completely vanished. He asked her, ashamed, if she found it disgusting. Letitia immediately reassured him, stating firmly that she married him knowing he was an incubus. She told him the tentacles are just a part of him and are not disgusting at all. Moved by her acceptance, Ethel called her an angel and promised to love her forever. Letitia reflects that she truly doesn't mind the nyoro, whether he controls them or not, though she does note he's become a bit too affectionate now that he's so well-fed. She recalls a recent incident while they were walking in the castle. She complained that he doesn't just tease her at night, but also teases her with his nyoro when they're alone during the day. Ethel, covering his mouth, playfully suggested that maybe he was born just to do naughty things to her. Letitia promptly told him to get a hold of himself. He continued, saying he can't stop thinking all day about ways to make her feel good. Letitia, trying to be firm, told him to snap out of it for both their sakes, reminding him that his work is returning to normal now that their first month is almost over. She insisted they both needed to focus on their work. Ethel agreed but then gave her a pleading look, promising to do his best to respond whenever she wanted private time. Letitia relented, agreeing as long as he properly handled his responsibilities. Later, Letitia tells Ethel about a tea party she attended that day hosted by the Queen. Ethel joked it was just his mother's friends having fun teasing the newlyweds. Letitia explained that at the party, the ladies were discussing strange rumors that had spread in the last month. They mentioned things being stolen and then reappearing in odd places, maids getting lost, loud noises in the night, and a feeling as if something had slipped past their feet. The Queen confirmed she had heard the stories too and revealed they were being blamed on the curse of the imprisoned king. This king, who lived 300 years ago, was confined for life due to a mental illness, and his spirit is now said to be wandering and seeking freedom. Letitia told Ethel she found it strange that a 300-year-old king would suddenly appear. Ethel then asked if she had noticed anything unusual, and Letitia replied, "No, not at all." Ethel teased her, saying she was just too focused on him to notice anything else. She also recalled how the ladies at the party commented on how much she had changed, saying she'd had a total glow-up and become so beautiful. They said it was no wonder Ethel was so smitten. Letitia credited her new look to the fashion-forward palace maids who were dressing her. As the ladies gushed, Letitia suddenly felt something under her dress. She realized with embarrassment that Ethel was under the table, and he whispered for her not to make a suspicious face. Letitia is at the tea party, blushing furiously and internally panicking as one of the ladies asks how her married life has been for the past month. She is unable to answer because her husband, Ethel, is secretly under the table teasing her. Suddenly, Ethel appears in the seat beside her, smiling as he puts his arm around her. He answers, yes, adding that this is exactly why they have been able to shut themselves away together for the whole month. Letitia is horrified, internally ranting that this is the reason he has been spacing out during his work, to the point that even his secretaries have been surprised by his behavior. As she thinks she must stop him, Ethel leans in and tells her to just be honest. The other ladies at the table just laugh, saying it is perfectly natural for newlyweds. One jokes that they were all surprised by how much the prince has changed and wonders aloud if he is so obsessed with Letitia that he is putting too much strain on her every night. Letitia internally screams that he is literally doing it right at that moment. Just then, she gasps and convulses in her chair as Ethel uses his Nyoro to insert from beneath the table. The ladies continue to gossip, noting that Ethel has not even glanced at another woman since their engagement and wondering what kind of magic Letitia must have used on him. As Letitia squirms and blushes, Ethel, still hidden, tells her not to be embarrassed, since everyone knows she did not manipulate him. He then speaks to the group, confessing that he has been hopelessly in love with her for a long time. He admits that because of his past conduct, no one ever took his feelings seriously, but thanks to the Queen Dowager's mediation, their marriage was unexpectedly arranged. He says he simply clung to the opportunity, not wanting to let it slip away. While he speaks, Letitia is trembling violently, feeling her energy being drained and silently begging for mercy, feeling she cannot take any more. Ethel finally pulls back and resurfaces, sitting beside Letitia and putting his arm around her again. He calmly tells the ladies that his wife is just shy and has never been good with this kind of talk. Letitia, still shaking, can only glare at him, thinking he has no right to say that and vowing he will remember this later. She is in a daze, having just experienced an orgasm from 2 tongues at once. Suddenly, she cannot hold back a scream. At the same time, one of the other ladies shouts that something just passed underneath them. The queen immediately calls for her maids to please check the area, while the other guests panic, wondering if this is the rumored ghost of the imprisoned king. A maid reports that there is nothing there. Ethel seizes the opportunity, announcing that Letitia seems to be in shock and has lost the use of her legs. He says he will take her with him and that the others should please go ahead without them. The queen tells him to take care of her, and Letitia, hiding her face, thinks, thank goodness. Once they are in a private reception room, Letitia explodes, yelling at him that his actions at the tea party were really terrible. Ethel simply holds her, kisses her head, and apologizes, saying he never meant to embarrass her. He admits he had a backup plan to spill tea and divert everyone's attention if the commotion had not happened. Letitia, defeated, says she doesn't care anymore, but then Ethel asks her to turn around so he can check if her dress is stained. She checks the back of her dress and is relieved to find the stain has not reached it. However, Ethel stops her, insisting they must check the inside too. He lifts her dress and confirms that her petticoat is definitely soaked. He then teases her, asking if it wasn't enough, and commenting on the thickness of using 2 mouths. He whispers, asking if she came that easily just from being inserted, calling her cute. He kisses her again, apologizing and saying her face trying to hold back was irresistible. Letitia, still feeling the afterglow, protests that she has not forgiven him. She argues that they are in the royal palace and someone might pass by, but Ethel simply reassures her that everyone knows what is happening when the royal reception room door is locked. He tells her he loves that serious side of her and that he just wants to taint her and hear her voice. He begins to make love to her again right there in the room, and Letitia cries out as she climaxes once more. Ethel praises her exquisite vitality and tells her to become messy. Letitia, in a daze, thinks about how happy she is that Ethel is so crazy about her, but also tries to rationalize that getting messed up in the palace is not something to be proud of and is just a formality of her wifely duties. Ethel, however, just whispers that he cannot stop. Later, a fully dressed Letitia is angrily scolding Ethel. She tells him she is setting boundaries for their married life, declaring that leaving the Queen's tea party like that was incredibly rude and she will not deal with such mischief again. She lays down the law. From now on, all intimate activities are absolutely forbidden outside of the bedroom. Ethel pouts, asking if the thrill of doing it elsewhere isn't part of the fun. When Letitia yells his name, he points out that she seemed to feel it more than usual too. He finally relents and says, "Got it," but Letitia is left exasperated, wondering if he really understands it all. Suddenly, a fairy bursts through the window, shouting for help and saying something terrible is happening. Letitia recognizes the fairy as Duke. They both rush to the window and see Ethel's brother, Lord Richard, and his companions dragging something through the garden. Letitia gasps, recognizing the creature they have captured. She identifies it by its red-pointed hat and sharp nose and turns to Ethel in horror, asking why there is a leprechaun in the palace. Letitia runs for help, shouting that something is happening in the backyard. She finds Ethel, his brother Richard, and others gathered there, with Richard looking annoyed. Ethel thanks Letitia, explaining that her timely interruption prevented him from getting into a childish brawl with his brother. Letitia asks what Richard was planning to do with the leprechaun she had seen. Ethel clarifies that Richard and his men had captured the fairy and were trying to restrain him to force him to reveal the location of fairy treasure. He adds that he let the leprechaun go just before the guards could arrive. Ethel looks serious, saying he had warned them that messing with fairies never ends well. Letitia agrees, recalling that traditional fairy tales say fairies are not always friendly neighbors to humans. She reflects that while helping fairies can bring benefits, harming them will surely result in retaliation, and she calls what Richard did awful. Letitia then becomes pensive, finding the whole situation strange. She wonders why a fairy, who should hate being seen by people, would appear in public on purpose, and how he even managed to get caught by Lord Richard. She speculates that perhaps something forced the fairy to reveal himself despite the risk, and she suddenly has a realization, wondering if this incident is connected to all the recent strange disturbances at the palace. A few days later, her suspicions seem to be confirmed, as Lord Richard and his companions are shown screaming in absolute terror. Letitia and Ethel discuss this new event, and Ethel identifies the apparition that terrified them as a Dullahan, a headless knight known to herald death. A horrified Letitia asks if this means Richard is going to die. Ethel guesses it is the fairy's reprisal for what Richard did to the leprechaun and notes that the Dullahan simply vanished into the garden's darkness afterward. Ethel reassures her that if a warning is all it was, Richard will likely be fine. He also informs her that due to the string of incidents, his father, the king, has launched an official investigation involving scholars and priests. Letitia gets excited by this news, saying it's best to let experts handle the situation. She then rapidly rattles off her folklore knowledge, identifying the fairy causing people to get lost as a pixie, the one responsible for the loud noises as a bogle, and the creature that sped through the tea party as either a puck or a leprechaun. She then turns to Ethel and asks him, since he can see fairies, if he has noticed the large number of them that have recently come to the palace. Ethel confirms he can, reminding her he is originally from fairyland. However, when she asks if he noticed them, he just smiles and says, nope, claiming he hasn't been around the palace much lately so he didn't notice. Letitia just looks at him and thinks, I see. She narrates that the king's scholars and priests later concluded that fairies were indeed responsible for the incidents. Their investigation showed the disturbances were limited only to the palace and its immediate surroundings, with nothing happening in town, which suggested the fairies had come from their realm specifically to the palace. Following this, an unprecedented public warning was issued, ordering people not to interact with any fairies they might see. Letitia thinks this is a sensible precaution, as people unfamiliar with fairies might approach them carelessly and cause an irreversible problem. Still, she is left with the lingering question of why the fairies have come to their world. Sometime later, Letitia is in her office writing letters. Her maid, Sophia, asks if she is tired and suggests a tea break. Letitia declines, saying she is fine and wants to finish her work before Ethel returns from the palace. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out in the hallway, with a man shouting and a maid screaming. Letitia rushes out and asks Sophia what happened. Sophia explains that a man was hitting on the maids, but when he was accused of cheating he ran inside to escape. Another maid adds with disgust that he was apparently seeing 5 women at once, which Letitia finds shocking. When Letitia asks for a description, the maids tell her he is a handsome young man who carries a pipe. Letitia has a flash of realization, identifying him as a Gankana, the flirt fairy. She recalls that this is a beautiful fairy who uses sweet words to steal the hearts of human maidens, and those who fall in love with him can waste away and even die. She declares that they must confirm his identity. Just then, the handsome fairy appears, holding his pipe and casually telling the beautiful ladies not to look so scary. He explains that he just flirts with pretty girls when he sees them and doesn't consider it cheating. Letitia is suddenly relieved, remembering that the Gankana is just a flirt who doesn't have special powers or intentionally hurt women, though he is still a concern. One of the maids just calls him a total loser. The other maids are furious, yelling at him and asking if he just sampled them one by one or if he thinks everyone's different and everyone's great. Another shouts that the rest of the world calls that cheating. The Gankana just laughs nervously and asks them to calm down. His eyes then land on Letitia, and he immediately calls her a beautiful young lady and his destiny. He pleads for her to be gentle, claiming his lonely, parched heart needs her love. Letitia bluntly informs him that she is married and suggests that if he is parched, he should go drink some water. As the fairy protests, Letitia deftly snatches his pipe right out of his hand. He screams, demanding she give it back. Letitia holds the pipe away, saying she will return it only if he answers her questions. The fairy panics, exclaiming that a Gankana without his pipe is like gingerbread without ginger. Letitia asks why he came to the human world and what he is doing here. He reluctantly agrees to talk and explains that he is looking for someone. When Letitia asks who, he clarifies that they escaped, so we're all here searching for them. Having revealed that, he snatches his pipe back, declares, "That's it," and tells Letitia he doesn't like mean women. The fairy then makes a run for it, and though Letitia and the maids shout for him to wait, he gets away. He leaps away but lands directly in front of Ethel, who is just returning home holding a lovely gift. Back inside, Ethel tells Letitia he hurried home from the palace because he wanted to show her the gift he received. He then asks her what she has been doing. Letitia becomes nervous, seeing that while Ethel is smiling, his eyes are not smiling at all. A small panel shows the Gankana clinging to Letitia, falsely claiming she jumped on him. Ethel, now looking angry and holding the captured Gankana, just says Letitia's name and tells her to take her time and explain the whole story. Later, Letitia is heard stammering an explanation. The scene then cuts to the bedroom, where Ethel is punishing her, calling her a bad wife for surprising him. As Letitia pleads for him to stop, Ethel sternly asks who gave her permission to stop her hands. He orders her to be a good girl and fondle her own chest, warning that if she stops again, his Nyoro will take over instead. Letitia nervously obeys, panting as she touches herself. Ethel watches and praises her as she cries out that she is about to climax. Afterward, as Letitia lies panting in bed, she reflects that Ethel did keep his promise about no advances outside the bedroom. However, in return, he has taken overwhelming control of their private time inside the bedroom. Ethel then shows her the gift he had received, a small ring left on his office desk that morning by the leprechaun as a thank you present. He says he wanted to show it to her right away and then holds it up, smiling as he asks if she knows where it's meant to go. The next image reveals the small, rose-colored magic ring has been placed on her nipple. Ethel observes that it fits her cute, little tip perfectly and won't come off. Letitia is shocked he would put it there, crying out as the ring begins to vibrate, sending powerful stimulation through her.